was sharing this story of when I used to work, the first time I learned a sterile procedure in a medical setting to scrub in and scrub in a doctor, a physician. And I was sharing this story with someone yesterday, and I thought it might be a good story to share on my social media profiles. So I thought that it was just so exciting and just amazing to learn these procedures. I was just in awe of the fact that these physicians could make such change and have such a positive impact in the patient's experience with just such a little bit of effort, it seemed, right? So they make it look so easy. And the first time I ever helped a doctor scrub into a sterile procedure and even was made aware that there was a sterile procedure, it was for a laser vein ablation, I believe is the exact medical term. And this is for the treatment of spider and varicose veins. Spider veins are more often treated with an injectable that collapses the vein. But for varicose veins, larger veins, they used this brand new laser. And this technology, the doctor that I knew at that time was very, very, very accelerated in his knowledge and understanding of medicine. And he was highly sought after. People would watch him on podcasts or video casts in Europe. And this was during a time when there wasn't even a social media live option. You know, it was technologically not the same game, you know, during that time. And everyone thought that this person was just like so amazing. I felt so honored to work with this person. And we did this surgery. It wasn't really a surgery, it was a procedure where you insert with a catheter and ultrasound guidance a laser into the vein that is varicose, that is or insufficient or not functioning appropriately. From my understanding, what happens with these veins is that they become insufficient because the blood pools, causing bulging and that unattractive aesthetic. And so it can be very painful for patients as well. And when you have any circulation issues, that's usually a sign of a cardiac issue, because as you know, or maybe you don't, but the heart is responsible for pumping the blood to the extremities and to the rest of the body. So we were in the office setting, and I was a clinical medical assistant at that time. When I moved to Northwestern, I was an administrator for endocrinology and rheumatology. I had some clinical crossover, but it was mostly administrative. And while I was there learning sterile procedure, it was so specific. You cannot touch any of the instruments with your bare hands. The way you have to put on your gloves is so different because you can't touch the outside of the gloves with your bare hands, even if your hands are clean. So it was so precise, and the precision was just no room for error. You put the gown on the doctor, they just spin around, you tie it for them, and you are not yet sterile while you're dressing the doctor to be sterile, and then you put on your sterile equipment, and it's like you guide your hands into the gloves, and they're in sterile packaging, and then you kind of adjust them with the tips of the sterile portion of the glove, and you're wearing a face mask and usually a head covering and a sort of apron or drape. And for this procedure, they surround the vein with saline solution, because when you administer heat to collapse the varicose vein or reroute the blood flow, you don't want to damage the healthy tissue surrounding that one insufficient vein or path of circulation that is no longer working effectively. And so the doctor would have to go through this process of surrounding the vein with this liquid, and there would be an ultrasound tech there, showing him where the vein was through the entire length of the vein. And then after doing so, with the same ultrasound guidance, he would insert this laser that was surrounded by a catheter or a sheath, and it would go a long distance, sometimes the whole length of the leg, and the patient would be awake but under local anesthetic. And then you retract the sheath, and the laser is just this tiny little filament, right? Think of how small a vein is. So it's smaller than that. And then you slowly retract while delivering the correct amount of heat throughout. And there's just very little room for error. I never saw him have a procedure, be rendered ineffective. It was always effective. And the blood that would be pooled in these veins that would cause these anesthetic appearances or pain or difficulty, putting pressure on the foot. Some people would have, a lot of pain associated with this. And when he would finish, it would just be such a world of difference in the lives of these patients from day to day. And I remember being in that position thinking to myself, wow, this is extraordinary. If someone could come in this excruciating pain with this set of circumstances that maybe prevents them from working, prevents them from playing with their children, from taking walks outside with their family and their dog, or, whatever it was, that I was happy to be a part of it, and grateful to be learning. And I never thought, that my life would go in any other direction. I just always believed that as long as I was focused, as long as I had a clear conscience with regards to my intentions and moral expectations and boundaries, that I would have this great life, and that I would just be rewarded karmically for caring, and for learning. And I always remember feeling like everything that they would teach me, I would think, oh my gosh, my kids are going to be so proud of me. I'm going to be able to tell my children when they're older that I learned how to do this, and that I know how to do that, and that I could give these incredibly comprehensive sets of details or instructions with regards to medical terminology and abbreviations and anatomical position. And I just never saw my career going in any other direction than success in the medical field and in helping people to alleviate their pain in exchange for happiness, financial stability, abundance, and the ability to provide for my children in a way that had a very positive, meaningful impact on the rest of society. And I was just thinking about all of the things that I learned along the way, and how one of the doctors that I worked with in the endocrine practice, she would treat these comprehensive diagnoses, or even something as basic as, a diabetic patient, and she would look at the info and she would just know already like what this patient needed to try next, And I would just think, God, I wish that I could be so smart. And after 5-6 years working there in that capacity, I wasn't that smart. I didn't inherently have that knowledge, but I learned what the doctors would do. And I could think off of the top of my head in that set of circumstances what the next best decision would be. And I could actually, and I did this commonly, daily, on a daily basis, I would write down in the note sections of my patients' charts this description of what I thought should happen next for them, based on what the doctor had done previously. And then proactively, I would create an order as the doctor would write it traditionally prior to the electronic medical records implementation. And I promise you, 99% of the time, all the doctor had to do was click approve because it was correct. And I remember thinking, I'm going to be okay, you know? I'm going to be okay, and my children are going to have beautiful lives, and everything I've gone through as a teenager and everything I've overcome and all of the tough times, they were all worth it because I'm going to be okay now. And sitting here tonight, I've never been more confused than ever. But anyways, I hope you guys are having a good night, and I'll talk to you guys later.